Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 25th of February. I'm Erin Viner. This is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. In just 2 hours' time, the state comptroller will release his highly anticipated report on housing between 2008 and 2013. The document addresses the handling of the crisis in skyrocketing real estate prices nationwide and government performance during the 5-year period. The findings are expected to be politically charged and are certain to be widely used in the election campaign. We get more from IBA's Margot Dukevich.
The blame game is on, and all eyes set for 6 o'clock when State Controller Yosef Shapira is due to release a special report on the cost of housing. The report will address the handling of housing by 3 previous governments, from the period that former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was in power and the 2 governments headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The report investigated how the government coped with the relevant authorities in tackling the housing crisis between February and December 2013. It also examined Israel's housing market from 2008 until December 2013, formulation of government policy and how the government dealt with the housing crisis, and steps taken to provide affordable housing to the public, as well as housing units already built. Some believe the report will deal a blow to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his Likud party in the upcoming March 17th elections. The report comes a week after the controller published another report that examined allegations of excessive spending and misappropriation of state funds by Netanyahu and his wife Sarah. Members of Likud attempted to prevent the publication of the housing report, demanding it be released after the upcoming elections. Yesterday, members of the Likud leadership convened at the Prime Minister's residence to discuss their response. Transport Minister Israel Katz is expected to be charged with delivering the party's spin. Likud is expected to blame former Finance Minister Yair Lapid, holding him responsible for the price increase of 5% in 2014 when he headed a special housing panel. For his part, Lapid declared that Israel's housing crisis is the direct neglect of Netanyahu and Likud. Years of procrastination, inaction and corruption caused housing prices to rise in a scandalous manner until a special housing panel was set up mid-2013, he wrote on his Facebook page. Lapid claimed that had his zero VAT housing plan gone into effect, it would have cut housing prices by 18%, adding the plan was stymied by Netanyahu. On the sidelines of the report, harsh criticism has been leveled at the government for spending vast amounts to build housing units in Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria instead of investing it to help young couples. According to local media reports, plans have already been approved to construct some 48,000 new housing units in West Bank settlements in Jerusalem, with some 15,520 of that number slated to be built in East Jerusalem. All parties are expected to spin the housing report findings to cast blame on others and deflect their own responsibility. What is unclear is whether after the elections the next government will learn from the report and make housing more affordable. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
With 1 week to go to the landmark congressional speech by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about Iran's nuclear program, tensions with the U.S. administration and Democratic lawmakers are escalating sharply. IBA's Eli Wogelenter has that story.
President Barack Obama's National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, called the invitation to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by top Republicans in Congress and its acceptance by the Prime Minister not only unfortunate, but destructive of the fabric of the relationship between Israel and the United States.
What has happened over the last several weeks, by virtue of the invitation that was issued by the Speaker and the acceptance of it by Prime Minister Netanyahu on 2 weeks in advance of his election, is that on both sides there has now been injected a degree of partisanship, which is not only unfortunate, I think it's destructive of the fabric of the relationship, and it's something that...
It's destructive of the fabric of the relationship.
Well, Charlie, take my point. It's always been bipartisan. We need to keep it that way. We want it that way. I think Israel wants it that way. The American people want it that way. And when it becomes injected or infused with politics, that's a problem.
You think he's coming here because he wants to influence the election in Israel?
I'm not going to ascribe motives to the Prime Minister. I think let him explain for himself.
In another development, Netanyahu declined an invitation by Democrats to meet in a closed-door session during his visit to Washington next week to iron out differences. Netanyahu told the top Senate Democrats that he regretted the partisan perception that has become attached to his speech and cited concern that the meeting might further the view of partisanship surrounding the highly controversial trip. In a letter to Senators Dick Durbin of Illinois, the second-ranked Democrat in the Senate chamber, and Dianne Feinstein from California, the top-ranked Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, Netanyahu wrote, "I regret that the invitation to address the special joint session of Congress has been perceived by some to be political or partisan. I can assure you that my sole intention in accepting it was to voice Israel's grave concerns about a potential nuclear agreement with Iran that could threaten the survival of my country." Before addressing Congress, Netanyahu will speak before the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee's National Convention, which is having its conference next Sunday to Tuesday. One speaker has canceled his trip to Washington, Zionist Union candidate Isaac Herzog, who called Netanyahu's speech nothing but spin. "American Jewry is very important to me," Herzog told AIPAC, "but it is clear that replacing the Netanyahu government is just as important, and that is my primary mission these days. When I'm Prime Minister, I will go anywhere in order to maintain the security interests of the citizens of the State of Israel." Herzog will address the meeting by video link from Israel. The question now is whether the White House is sending a speaker. Press Secretary Josh Earnest would not commit to sending any administration official to the AIPAC conference.
We'll have more information on that soon. Obviously, we've received an invitation from AIPAC, and we'll get back to them.
So we should expect just a name. It's not whether you're going to have an administration official attend the conference. It's just a matter of figuring out which administration official actually addresses AIPAC.
Well, again, I think we have received the invitation from AIPAC. We're considering the invitation, and once we've made a decision, we will get back to AIPAC about who the speakers will be, and then we'll be in a position to talk about it publicly here.
One person who is going to AIPAC is Bayit UD Chairman and Economy Minister Naftali Bennett. Bennett said he intends to help spearhead a campaign to introduce Israel's stance against the nuclear deal with Iran in the mainstream media. "The nuclear issue has no right, no left," he said. "During this time when Iran is nearing nuclear weapons proliferation under the eyes of world powers, we have no time for politics. I'm going to do it and be in the United States for the last political opportunity that we have to stop the Iranian nuclear program." Ellie Wogelanter, IBA News.
While giving congressional testimony, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry took a veiled swipe at Prime Minister Netanyahu's criticism of the nuclear deal being negotiated between the major powers and Iran. The White House also chimed in to deny reports that the emerging deal will be limited to just 10 years.
The policy is Iran will not get a nuclear weapon. And anybody running around right now jumping in to say, well, we don't like the deal or this or that, doesn't know what the deal is. There is no deal yet. And I caution people to wait and see what these negotiations produce. The P5+1 talks have made inroads since the Joint Plan of Action. We've halted the progress of Tehran's nuclear program. We've gained unprecedented insight into it. And we expect to know soon whether or not Iran is willing to put together an acceptable and verifiable plan.
I'm loath to get into the negotiating details of the position that is adopted by the United States and our international partners when they are sitting across the table from the Iranians. However, I will say that there was a report today indicating that we were negotiating for essentially a 10-year deal. Those reports are not correct. That does not reflect the accurate negotiating position of the United States and our international partners. What we need is a clear agreement from the international community and the Iranians, and an agreement that is verifiable. And any part of these of an agreement will include ready access by the international community to ensure that Iran is living up to their end of the bargain.
Israeli intelligence analysts and the general public seem to have been unimpressed by the so-called secret files leaked to the Guardian newspaper and Al Jazeera, casting doubt on claims about Iranian nuclear weapons made by Prime Minister Netanyahu that appear to contradict assessments by the Mossad intelligence agency. Security analyst Yossi Melman says that the claims of a scoop are baseless and that the public seems to consider the reports to be a crock of disinformation.
There is nothing in that document which is basically secretive. Any follower of Iran's nuclear program could have read the same information in the IAEA reports, in the media, and there is nothing to suggest in the document that there was a wedge between what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said and the Israeli intelligence community estimate. From the document, it seems that the intelligence and Netanyahu are compatible. They say more or less the same. There are no divisions between them regarding the facts, the details of Iran's nuclear program. However, there is a difference in the interpretation, in the ramifications of the details and the facts and the progress of Iranian nuclear program. And therefore, I think the impression that Al Jazeera tried to create that there was a wedge was completely wrong.
This is totally not information. It just seems to be an attempt to convince people, and they would do that because they know that the negotiations are coming to an end with the Americans one way or the other. Personally, I don't believe a word of it.
For me to all of a sudden start deciding that Israel is not at risk because from Iran's nuclear threat because of something that they wrote or they decided to declare, there's no reason for me to believe them.
In other news, U.S. President Barack Obama and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, have reportedly reached a significant meeting of the minds during a summit at the White House. The two leaders pledged to work together on a range of regional issues, including efforts to counter terror and threatening actions by Iran, as well as the stalled Middle East peace process.
We've had a wide-ranging conversation on a host of regional issues. Qatar is a strong partner in our coalition to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIL. And I expressed my appreciation to His Highness for the work that they've done in coordinating with other members of this coalition. And we also had a very useful discussion around Iran and the negotiations that are currently taking place to try to reduce the possibility of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon. Those negotiations are ongoing. I gave the Emir an update and assured him that our goal here is to be able to verify that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon and that we will continue to press Iran on some of its other actions in the region that often have a destabilizing effect. Recognizing, however, that we would greatly prefer to be able to resolve many of these issues diplomatically, and I know that Doha shares the same view.
That we're concerned as well about the terrorist groups in our region. I think we all share the same view. The reason why those terrorist groups are growing in our region, and we have to make sure that to solve this problem, we are all fighting terrorism, and it's a must, is to make sure that the reason why this happened doesn't happen again, because it happened a few years ago and it's happening again now. We mentioned about the situation in Palestine and about the peace process and what is the best for Palestine, and it is the important subject in the Middle East, and we have to find a solution for Palestine. And I'm happy to learn and to hear from you, President, that you're committed to find this peace process in Palestine.
Here at home, Zionist Union leader Isaac Herzog has responded to accusations from the Prime Minister that he's soft on national security. The former IDF major of military intelligence said that his party's campaign will devote greater energy on letting voters know more about his security credentials.
Israelis want to know about me more. They know Livni. Livni and I are running together. We're on the same ticket, but we will expose my story, my experience as a major in Unit 8-100, my experience as a minister in 5 different cabinet posts, my writings, my speeches. I was a member of the Security Cabinet for 7 years. I took the most difficult decisions of life and death in closed rooms. Together with Rivlin, we are 15 years in that cabinet. We know what we're talking about when we're talking about security, when we're talking about foreign affairs, and when we're talking about Israel standing amongst the nations. So yes, we will expose it more. I believe that hand in hand in being tough against terror, we should be innovative and initiating a process, trying to find new ways and means of coming to terms with our neighbors. I don't hide it.
In what appears to be another price tag attack, Palestinians in Jabaa report that a mosque was set on fire overnight. Mayor of the village near Bethlehem, Abdul Karim Sharaf, said that more than 300 residents worked to extinguish the blaze after they were awakened at 1 o'clock in the morning by flames, smoke, and screaming. Damage was caused to the floor, walls, and windows of the structure, but there were no injuries. Hebrew graffiti left at the site called for the redemption of Zion and revenge. The police and the army are investigating the incident, which is the second time that a mosque has been burned in the village. An attack back in 2012 also bore the hallmarks of a so-called price tag attack by far right-wing Jewish extremists who are protesting anti-settlement policy by the government. Leaders across the political spectrum have widely condemned the phenomenon, with some describing the attacks as terrorist in nature. The High Court today overturned a verdict from the Central Elections Committee to allow the Israel Bedouin political faction to distribute January's memorial edition of the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo free of charge. The ruling nullifies a decision from the committee judge, Salim Joubran, banning distribution of the publication that's cover included a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad. The new ruling determined that giving away copies of Charlie Hebdo can be used as a legitimate campaign tactic and are not illegal gifts as deemed by Judge Joubran. Israel Bedouin chairman Avigdor Lieberman praised the latest ruling, saying that it sends an important message that Israel is Jewish and democratic and there can be no surrender to threats from violent Arab members of Knesset. Defense officials are working to determine why the advanced anti-ballistic Arrow 2 and 3 missile systems have failed a series of recent test launches. Sources at the Defense Ministry's Administration for the Development of Weapons and Technological Infrastructure say that in a trial conducted in September, the Arrow 2 failed to hit its designated target, but instead passed nearby. They denied Russian reports that the interceptor fell into open water 3 kilometers off the shores of Tel Aviv. Another test, slated for the Arrow 3, was never even carried out in December after its radar failed to lock onto the intended target. The systems are essential components of the country's defensive shield that also include the Iron Dome, Patriot, and David Sling protection networks. President Rivlin hosted a delegation of Bedouin leaders at his official residence in the capital today as part of his efforts to embrace the Negev community. The Bedouin urged Rivlin to use his powers to help improve their living conditions. IBA's Aria O'Sullivan gives us more in this report.
There is a sour taste in the mouths of the Bedouins of the Negev. They are still seething from rioting that swept through the town of Rahat over the death of a Bedouin youth during a police drug raid and mourning a horrific wreck that killed 8 mothers from Hora. President Reuven Rivlin welcomed the delegation of Bedouin notables to his residence and gave them a chance to voice their ails. One by one, the sheikhs, doctors, and politicians beseeched the president to help them stop the house demolitions and land evictions that were souring the Bedouins' relationship with the state and to improve the neglected health and education services. A schism has opened between the 200,000 Bedouin in the Negev and the rest of the country. The number of Bedouin volunteering for military service is at an all-time low as they become more Islamized and alienated from the Jewish state.
We are living here 3,000 years, some of us more than 3. How can you claim or blame me that I captured the land of Israel? We are the owner of these lands. We born here. Our grandfather, they came here 300 years. We didn't push the Jewish or the Israelis from here and they go, hey, go back to Europe. Absolutely. We want to live with them, but we will not let them to live instead of us to push us out from our lands and to give them. Absolutely no. We have We need to be equal rights here. We will fight in civil rights. We are not in terror action, absolutely, but we have the full right as academic, as a citizen, to fight for our rights.
President Rivlin heard Abu Rabia's comments and promised to take up their complaints with the various ministers. But Rivlin also told the Bedouins frankly, they too had to change with the times. Your way of life is like our forefather Abraham, but the world changed and you have to understand that. To reach an understanding, you need goodwill on both sides. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Over 250 players from 33 nations are participating in the European Individual Chess Championship that kicked off at the Ramada Hotel in Jerusalem Monday night. The competitors include 120 grandmasters and 7 former European champions who hope to regain their titles in the tournament. About 100 Israelis are among the contestants and include national team players Maxim Rodstein, Ilya Simtrin, Tamir Nabati, and Emil Sutovsky. The largest delegation is from Russia, with 42 players, while there are 12 from Ukraine and 9 each on the team sent from Turkey and Armenia. Many of the visiting players say that they hope that they have some free time to tour Israel before returning home from the tournament, which concludes on March 8th. Turning to arts and entertainment, and the contemporary Dragon Kung Fu Dance Company is coming to the country to showcase its talents in the powerful Gateway performance as part of the spring of the Chinese Dance Festival, jointly sponsored by Tel Aviv's Suzanne Dalal Center and the Chinese Embassy. The 11 dancers between the ages of 18 and 26 don't come from dance backgrounds, but were trained in the martial arts, and the troupe was founded by Hong Kong actor and martial arts superstar Jackie Chan. The contemporary group is bursting with unforgettable energy, combining the art of Kung Fu with traditional Chinese dance. It's a show that the entire family will enjoy and is slated to kick off in Haifa this Saturday night, February 28th, continuing until the 7th of March at venues in Jerusalem, Ashdod, Herzliya, and Tel Aviv. Like a lot of fun. Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says that it's time for a real treat after the recent harsh conditions, and that tomorrow we can expect a rise in temperatures to unseasonably high levels, accompanied by fair skies and a drop in humidity. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours.